Good morning. Thank you so much for joining our online service this morning at Lakelands Elim Church. We are now meeting back in person and we would love for you to join with us if you are able to do so. Please do get in touch with us if you can. I would just like to make a note for next week. Next week will be a really special week for us at Lakelands Church as we honour, as we celebrate and as we pray for Jeremy and Leslie as they step into the next season that God has for them. If you can, we would love you to be in person and to just celebrate and mark this moment in their journey of faith. We want to be able to pray God's blessing on them, and we would love for you to be there to join in with us in that. Also, we want to honour all that they have laid and all that they have sown into Lakelands over the time that they have been here. And again, if that has involved you in some way, we would love for you to come and just to be part of the story. So please do get in touch with us. We would love to see you there next week. There won't be an online service posted next week, but we will continue to share different things through the week on our Facebook page. So be incredibly blessed as you worship with us this morning. Please do pray for Jeremy and Leslie, and hopefully we will see you next Sunday. I'm just going to hand over to Josh, who is going to lead us in some worship this morning.
Faith can move the mountains. Let the mountains move. We come with expectation, waiting here for you. Waiting here for you. You're the Lord of all creation. Still you know my heart. You're the author of salvation. You loved me from the start. Waiting here for you with our hands lifted high in praise. And it's you adore, singing hallelujah. You are everything you promised. Your faithfulness is true, and we're desperate for your presence. All we need is you. Waiting here for you with our hands lifted high in praise. And it's you we adore, singing hallelujah, singing hallelujah. waiting here for you. Oh, we're waiting on your presence. We're waiting on your presence. We're waiting on you. Singing hallelujah, hallelujah, singing hallelujah, we sing hallelujah, we sing hallelujah. Waiting here for you with our hands lifted high in praise, and it's you we adore, singing hallelujah. Waiting here for you.
Good morning. For those of you who couldn't be with us in person this morning, we are delighted to still be able to meet together online and to continue to journey through our walk in Esther. We will be meeting again in person next week using St. George's building in Carrick-on-Shannon, and we would love to see you in person again next week. So please do be in touch with us through Facebook or through the contact details that are shown at the beginning and the end of this video. But this morning we are just going to finish off our series looking through the book of Esther. We have explored Esther as a character, we have looked at Haman, and this morning we are just going to conclude these kind of 3 weeks that we've had looking at the character of Mordecai. There is so much more that we could unpack through this book, but we hope that what we have done will just prepare us for the season that God is taking us into. And so what do we know about Mordecai? Mordecai was a Jew. He was the older cousin of Esther. And though we don't know all the reasons behind how it came about, he ended up being the carer for Esther. When she became an orphan, what we can assume through the death of her parents, he was the relative who took her in, who showed compassion on her, and who journeyed and taught and raised her through life. He was the one that prepared her, that put her forward for the task of queen. He was the one who showed her compassion and nurtured her. And that is one of the things that is so great about this guy called Mordecai. And we witness this all through the book. And the first kind of key, the first part that we can take this morning from his life is this godly character of Mordecai. That Mordecai was a man of godly character. We don't just see this through his compassion for Esther, yet through the whole book we read of his dedication to his people, of his commitment to God, of his respect for authority that is before him. throughout the book in different ways. We get this depiction of what it means to live as a man or as a woman with godly character. And actually the importance for us to build that as foundational into our lives as well. And so let's just look at a few scriptures through the book of Esther that highlight some of those key moments where we get a glimpse into Mordecai's character. And the first one is in chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 21 to 23 together. And it says this: One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigantha and Tershish, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot and gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai the credit for the report. When an investigation was made into Mordecai's story, it was found to be true, and the two men were impaled on a sharpened pole. This was recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign. And so we see this godly character shine through. Mordecai was loyal. Mordecai was respectful of a king. Now we need to remember that this was part of an empire who had taken them out of their own nation, of their own home, of their own safety, landed them in a new place and expected them to follow all the traditions and cultures that they had to. And yet, even in the face of such adversity and of such an empire, Mordecai is able to show respect and loyalty to the man who is currently in charge. Mordecai didn't get bitter or angry or resentful at what had happened, but he chose to respect those who had been put in authority above him. And that's such a reflection of this godly character, and actually such an important thing for us to note as we read on into Mordecai's story. Because actually in chapter 3, we get a different side of Mordecai's character, which again reflects his godly character. But actually, if we don't understand the first part, we can misunderstand the second part. And let's read the second part. It's in chapter 3, and it's just the first 2 verses. It says this: Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, over all other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for the king had commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. Now, if we don't hear the first part of this introduction to Mordecai, it can seem that Mordecai is somehow being disrespectful or rude or standing against the authority that's been put before him. But that wasn't Mordecai's point, because we've just noticed and we've just highlighted that he is loyal and respectful to the king in an extreme measure to put himself at risk, his safety at risk, in order to save the life of the king. And so actually Mordecai here isn't trying to be rude or disrespectful or just wind Haman up because of who he is and the people group that he's from, as we looked at last week. Actually, Mordecai's godly character allows him to be loyal, allows him to be respectful of the king, but also to know the order of which his respect falls. Actually, number one, his respect is with God. And God says, don't bow to anybody else. Don't worship anybody else. I am number one. I alone am the one you should bow to. And so Mordecai outworks this. He alone bows to God. Yet when it's in its right place, he is respectful and loyal to the king, but not at the expense of his relationship with the Father. And so actually these two passages together, although they may seem to contradict one another or be in conflict, actually they paint this picture of Mordecai's respect for God above all else. But actually, because of that respect for God above all else, he can respect the authority that's been put before him in earthly measures when it doesn't try to take God's place. He was a man of godly character. And godly character can be repaid. Chapter 10 and verse 3 says, Mordecai the Jew then became prime minister, with authority next to that of King Xerxes himself. He was very great among the Jews, who held him in high esteem, because he continued to work for the good of his people and to speak up for the welfare of all their descendants. Mordecai's good character comes back as a benefit when he is promoted to prime minister, because he got his respect for God and his respect for the king in the right order when they were called into question. But also, Mordecai's godly character meant that he was constantly and consistently crying out on behalf of his people. It wasn't just about him. His godly character meant that he was seeking the very best for the people that God had put around him. And so when he becomes prime minister, he is not just another official that is there to make life difficult for the Jews, but actually, as he's promoted and even as he takes this place of honor in this foreign empire, the rest of his people find him great. They hold him in high esteem because they have witnessed his respect. They have witnessed his godly character. And so they treat him well. And I want us to note that Mordecai's godly character means that he treats Esther with respect. He treats the king with respect. He treats Haman with respect. Actually, each person that he encounters, he modeled the godly character. And isn't that such a challenge for us, that actually in every relationship that we face, we model godly character, that we share love and compassion with one another. Not just with the people we like or get on with, but with all people. Just recently, Josh and I started to do some marriage counselling with some friends of ours who are getting married this summer. And this week we met and we talked about this idea that some days you will love each other and it will be really easy to be married. It will be really easy to demonstrate a godly character and respect one another. But some days, there are other days when that can be more of a challenge. And actually it doesn't come as easily. But yet we are still called on those days to reflect a godly character. And can I say that as we journey into the next step of Lakelands, there will be days where we find it really easy, where we all are in unity and we are all on the same path and making the same choices. And actually it is really simple to reflect our godly character to one another. But can I say that there are probably going to be days when we will disagree on things, when we'll upset one another, when things won't be as smooth. And that's okay. It is okay to have those days where we have dialogue about what's next. As long as on those days we commit to reflect our godly character just as much as we do on the easy days. Just as Mordecai did. Secondly, just again coming from that aspect of compassion that he shows, Mordecai is this incredible example of what it means to partner together for the kingdom. This book could easily have been called the Book of Mordecai in the Bible, and we wouldn't really have questioned it either, because the heroic nature in the book lies both with Esther and with Mordecai. It was shown through Esther's bravery, but also through Mordecai's strategy, through his commitment, and through his involvement. Mordecai didn't spend time arguing about who was going to do what job, or who was going to be the front man, or who was going to hit the press when this story came out. He was focused on the bigger picture. Salvation for the people, safety for the people, freedom for the people. Yet I wonder how often in our society today do we fall into that argument of who is going to be the face, who is going to be the one with the best idea, who is going to be the one that heads this thing in this direction, or who gets the congratulations if it goes well, or who gets the blame if it doesn't go well. Yet Mordecai isn't about any of those discussions. He's content to play his part in the story. He is content to partner with Esther in order that the greater good can be achieved, in order that God's plan can be achieved. Ultimately, it's God's face who we want as number one. It's God's name who we want with that best idea. But yet that calls for us to be content in the role that we have in that story and to partner with one another, because we can't do it on our own. Mordecai was content to partner alongside Esther. There is this beautiful picture that's painted in chapter 2 and verse 11 where it says, every day Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to find out about Esther and what was happening to her. Now, this isn't some nosy relation picture trying to suss in and find out your business, as I'm sure some of us have probably experienced. But rather, this is this beautiful picture of Mordecai having journeyed alongside Esther to this point, and she's now found her way into the harem, and still he says, you are not on your own. We are still in this together. I cannot be exactly where you are, but I will be alongside you. I will be your partner in this. And can I suggest that for us to fulfill the plan, the mission, the purpose that God has for us at Lakelands, in Carrick-on-Shannon and beyond, that each of us are called to take up that mindset that Mordecai has. To lay aside any competition or battle or struggle to be at the front or with the best idea or to be the face or the name, whatever it might be, that we are to lay those aside and be content with the fact that we have been called to partner together for the bigger mission of God. And that just like Mordecai, we would walk alongside one another to see what's happening, what is God doing, to remind one another we are in this together. It is not just about me. There's a wonderful word called Ubuntu. I don't know if you have heard of it in the African culture. And it's this idea, it's often told through this story of a missionary who went out and he put some sweets on a table and he stood the children around the table and he said, we're going to play a little game. And the first person to get to the table wins the sweets. And so the children understand the rules and he says, I'm going to count you in, 1, 2, 3, go. And at his signal, each of the child takes hands with the one either side of them, and together they walk into the table and they all reach it at the same time. And the missionary says, why did one of you not run and win all the sweets? And one of the little kids says, Ubuntu. How could one celebrate when the others don't? We are one, we are family, we are together. There's no concept in some of those smaller tribes of just me and I by myself. It's we, it's us, we are together. How could we celebrate one if the others aren't getting the same celebration or the same experience that we have? We are together. Would that be our heart for Lakelands? Actually, that we would partner together. Not I or me or you, but we. And finally this morning, as we look at Mordecai and wrap up this time that we've spent in Esther, I want us to grasp afresh how important and influential was his understanding of prayer and worship. Let's just read another passage together from chapter 4, and it's verses 15 to 17, and it says this. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. So she just heard of the plan to get rid of the Jews, and she replies with this. Go, gather all the Jews in the city of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, day or night. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. So Mordecai went, and did everything that Esther had ordered him. Now we must note that this, when she calls for this time to fast, it's intricately linked with this idea of pray and fast. She wasn't just expecting them not to eat for 3 days. Actually, it was assumed that that would link together with prayer and fasting and worship, to remove ourselves from something in order to press in to God. And now we note that it's Esther who calls for this time of prayer. But again, we need to remember that so much of Esther's life has been spent in the home of Mordecai. And so he has taught her and he has ingrained into her this idea that actually what's key in our life is prayer and worship and fasting. When we need an encounter, when we need to hear from God, when we need breakthrough, before we do anything else, we pray. Before we do anything else, we come and we seek what God is saying, what God is instructing us for this season. And so Mordecai gathers all of these people and they have this incredible, I'm sure, time of prayer and fasting and interceding for the journey that Esther is about to make on their behalf. And we know the end of the story. God moves. He hears, he responds to the people in an incredible way, and breakthrough happens. Because before action, before all the doing and the strategizing and the pulling together of the plans, they spent time before God. It had become so normal in their home to pray and to fast that was the first and obvious thing to do before any other events took place. And later again in chapter 9, if you've read through that story, we hear that after the victory has come, Mordecai says, now let's assign some days for prayer, for feasting, for worship, to celebrate what God has done, to celebrate the breakthrough that has come. Because prayer and fasting and worship isn't simply the necessary in times when we're seeking a breakthrough, but it's also the response in a time of victory. Prayer and worship are almost like the cover of a book, if you can imagine it. Because see, without those, you just end up with lots of loose pieces of paper that get scattered around everywhere. But when you enclose those scattered pieces and those individual pieces of paper in the book cover, they are held front, back, and down the middle together in prayer and worship, and then it creates this beautiful story that's enclosed within those pages and held together by them. How amazing would it be if our story began with prayer and worship, ended with prayer and worship, and was held together through our prayer and through our worship, and hence we created a beautiful story of God's work through us. We can develop great plans. We can develop great strategies. We can put on wonderful outreach events. But if it is not held together in prayer, it's just some individual pieces of a book that are floating around. Can we hear afresh this morning through Mordecai the power that is found when we hold our stories together through prayer and through worship? Over the coming weeks, as we continue just to step forward and to seek what God has for us, I am expectant that as we step into a season where we are going to devote ourselves to prayer, to worship, to fasting, to seeking God's face, that actually He will speak. And I would challenge you again this morning, that like Mordecai, you would be a part of the story. You would partner alongside us to pray, to seek God, that we may live as church that displays godly character, that we live as church that is that understands and practices and knows the power of our prayers, that we may see salvation come in our community, because we were willing to take on a godly character like Mordecai did. Let's just pray together as we finish. Father, I thank you for the challenge that comes through Mordecai's life. Father, I thank you for the godly character that he displayed. Father, whether he was in the victory moments or the challenging moments, whether he was with the people that he had compassion for, or whether it was the people that he struggled with, Father, in each situation he displayed the character of God. Father, I thank you that he had contentment in order to partner in the mission that you had set for him, that it was never a battle to be ahead of Esther or to be the front man. But Father, his desire was to partner with what you were doing in order to see salvation come. Father, I thank you as well that he knew the power of prayer, that he knew the power that could come when we fast and when we pull ourselves away from things in order to focus on you. Father, would we be a people who live in that understanding and that knowledge? That we would press into prayer together, partnering together in prayer, in fasting and in worship. That you might develop within us godly characters, that you might reveal to us your heart for this place. That we would see your salvation come in greater measure, that we would see your kingdom built, that we would see greater works of your power and your compassion on the people around us, because we were willing to pray, to partner, to be shaped by you alongside one another. Amen.
How can I say it is well when my voice can barely speak? How can I sing you a song in the midst of suffering? Jesus, will you meet me here? Let your peace wash over me. I need you now more than ever. Teach my soul to sing. My God is still in control, and still he reigns on his throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. You have not left me alone, though the world has let me down. All of my sorrow and pain, I will trade it for a crown. Thank you for staying with me when the night was closing in. Whatever my lot, you are still God. I will sing again. My God is still in control, and still he reigns on his throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. My God is still in control, and still he reigns on his throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. It is well with my soul. with my soul. It is well 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 with my soul. My God is still in control. Still He reigns on His throne. The mountains may tremble and sea billows roll. I'll sing, it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. My God is still in control, and still He reigns on His throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing, it is well with my soul. My God is still in control.